The Compliance Perspectives podcast is sponsored by Case IQ, a global provider of whistleblowing case management and compliance solutions. Learn more at caseiq.com. Welcome to the Compliance Perspectives podcast. I'm Adam Turteltaub from the Society of Corporate Compliance and Ethics and Healthcare Compliance Association. Joining us today is New York-based Barbara Ann Boehler. Barbara Ann is Senior Director of the Program on Corporate Compliance and Ethics at Fordham University School of Law. And today we're going to be talking about a subject that she addressed in her Compliance and Ethics Professional magazine article, Elevating Compliance Education with Experiential Learning. Barbara Ann, thanks for tackling the topic in print and now with us on the podcast. So let's start with something sort of definitional. The term experiential learning gets used a lot, but what does it mean exactly?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be with you today. For me, I think of experiential learning as actually doing the thing. So giving students, learners, employees an opportunity to do the thing rather than to lecture about the thing or to explain the thing. It is very challenging nowadays to get people's attention with all of the digital noise and other noise that we have going on. So we are finding that by giving them an opportunity to practice something, to experience something, that has much more stickiness for them than simply talking to them about it.
That's a terrific and concise definition. You've already talked about it a little bit, but I'm hoping you tell us a little bit more about why it's worth pursuing instead of or in addition to conventional training.
Well, it's funny. I remember going to an event, and I do not even remember where it was held or exactly who was putting it on, but I remember very clearly the task. And so we were watching a real-time cybersecurity breach, and the players, if you will, at the front of the room all had a role. We were participatory as the audience, kind of calling out what they were meant to do. And for me, even, I think it was maybe 15, 20 years ago, watching that really stuck with me. And so to be able to present a learner with an opportunity to approach something in a slightly different way, it really sticks with them. And so at the law school, you can think of, very traditional, models like moot court experiential learning, or like the various clinical opportunities that we have for lawyers. And so I think that it's helpful for compliance officers to be thinking about ways that employees can kind of model information or model behaviors, if you will, if you want them to really kind of cut through the noise.
You make a great point there that they're not only just sort of passively learning, but they're also getting a chance to practice what they've learned and really see how it works in the real world when they're opposite others and ideas are bumping against each other. Now, one option you recommend is creating simulations like these. What makes for a good simulation?
Well, it's funny. So you're catching me right after our colloquium weekend. And so part of our program is the requirement that our online students come to campus for 2 days and have sort of a mini compliance conference. And we have various opportunities for them to practice this experiential learning. We have them review a case, and then in small groups, they take the case and they do a presentation of the risks to board members. And so we have various members of our faculty acting as board members, and they're challenging board members, kind of challenging the thought process of the students. So they're given limited time and this opportunity to work together to present to the board members. So that was day one. Day two, we did, and that was actually, day one was pretty inexpensive to kind of pull off. We just sort of needed a good case study and the time and space. Day two, we used a game that we actually purchased from a third party, and that is an online game that the students play all day, and actually they play out it's a change theory simulation, and from that we sort of borrow from many of the kinds of games that you might find at business school, which is a little bit novel for the law school. So I'm sort of coming off 2 days of game theory, I guess, if you will, with the students. And it was incredibly impactful. And they learned a lot. I mean, we teach them a lot in their 30 credit hours of courses, but we find that at the end of their time with us, this colloquium 2-day experience is really what they will remember going forward.
I think it's interesting that you pointed out that one, it doesn't have to be expensive, and two, that there are a variety of choices that you can create something in-house or you can go to a vendor, and either way you're going to have a lot of interaction among people and give them something to talk about long after the session is over. Now, you mentioned in their games, we're seeing a lot more of them emerge as training tools. How do we ensure that they're not just fun but also educational?
So the company that we use, or the product that we use, is it's called Experience Point, and it's an online um, case about a company that is going through a change. To be candid, it has nothing to do with compliance. Compliance isn't even one of the departments that you can potentially talk to, if you will, through the game, but the implication to compliance on understanding change theory is incredibly impactful. And so we usually sort of tease up the conversation or tease up the game by or level setting, that how we see this working sort of in a compliance role. And it's a full day simulation. Students work in groups. Not all of our groups are actually successful in the game. And there is a little bit of competition, healthy competition, which helps. And we also hear, when we debrief at the end, that it's hard, but rewarding. And so I think sometimes I like what kind of how you discussed, kind of removing I guess, the threat of being graded. It's not really about a grade per se. It's more about the learning experience. And so the colloquiums pass fail, so as long as you come, you pretty much pass. It's really more about solidifying those relationships and having that opportunity to practice what you've been learning.
Having that safe place to practice these things is just terrific. So let's talk about affordability. You mentioned earlier that when you did this 2-day program, one day was very inexpensive, the other day was more expensive. What's the best way to do these kinds of initiatives in a way that's not going to break the bank?
I think that you can create your own sort of case studies that it's probably better actually if you create your own case studies, because then they actually model real world things that are going on and happening and impactful to your own employees and students. So that isn't, I mean, it's more of a time investment, I think, than a monetary investment. The third party is a monetary investment. It's a little cheaper. I suppose we have a little bit of a cheat. They have sort of special rates for schools. So that's helpful. But I think that there's a lot that we can sort of pull together on our own. I do. I talk about it probably too much, but I do this cupcake frosting, cookie frosting exercise, which really only costs the materials, that we need to frost the cupcakes. And so there are things definitely that you can do to bring home concepts, I think, on a not very expensive way.
Hold on a sec. I have to admit you intrigued me. I've done 700 or so of these podcasts, and this is the first time decorating cookies and cakes has come up. I'm curious, what was the exercise?
I was several years ago stuck at an airport for a very long time, and I had a class the next day that I was really struggling with coming up with an exercise that would make sense to the students, but I was looking for something that was a little bit repetitive, a project to do, because I really wanted them to think about, you know, communication and how important communication is in compliance. So I sort of constructed what we call a policy and procedure drafting exercise. And I ask half of the students, usually it's a pretty small class, and I've done this with students, but then also with folks who have been compliance officers for a long time. So I make half of the class be the operations department and half of the class be the compliance department. The operations department is tasked with frosting cookies or cupcakes and decorating them. So, we have M&Ms, we have jelly beans, we have, frosting. I make them wear hairnets, aprons sometimes, gloves. And then the compliance department is tasked only with drafting a policy on how to frost a cupcake or a cookie. They are given the Code of Frosting Regulations, the CFR, because we are just that nerdy in compliance about how it's essentially a sanitary code takeoff. And then I sort of give them 20 minutes to do this. That's really the only prompt. And almost every time I run this exercise, and at this point I've run it, more than 20 times with various different, kind of pools of people, the departments never talk to each other. And when they do talk to each other, it doesn't really go well. And they're in the same room, often at arm's length. And sometimes they do talk to each other just to say, hey, can you pass the M&Ms? But they never talk to each other to figure out, hey, operations, how do you frost the cupcake so that can help to inform how I write my policy? Or, hey, compliance, what are you thinking in terms of regulation and how I should maybe think about drafting, or rather frosting the cupcakes? And so it's been very interesting to see kind of a little microcosm, to see how people react in this format. But the learning outcome is just very simple. Policies make more sense when people talk to each other. And so they do remember this exercise in a way that they will not remember me saying policies make more sense when people talk to each other.
I love that. It's such an innovative and fun way to make the point, and people get the benefit of being able to literally eat the fruits of their own labor. Well, Barbara Ann, thank you so much for sharing these insights with us today and for making me hungry. I want to thank all of you for taking the time to listen. I'm Adam Turteltaub from SCCE and HCCA. I hope we're able to expand your compliance perspective.